even if we technically have more control because of the fulcrum action, because of the awkward position, we'll actually have less control. In this video, I'm going to explain and demonstrate correct finger position on the piano, and we're starting right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by discussing what finger position is, or what I mean by that. Then we're going to talk about the three basic different kinds of finger position or hand position on the piano, depending on if we're playing white keys, black keys, etc. Then we're going to talk about why this matters, and this is going to be the most in-depth section of the video. And then lastly, we're going to talk about, or I'm going to demonstrate rather, what this looks like with a scale and an arpeggio, so that you can apply this directly to your practice sessions. So let's start by talking about what I mean. And basically, what I mean by correct finger position is the relative position of the fingers on the keyboard. So for instance, this is a finger position, this is a finger position. These are different positions on the keyboard. You can see that. If we just think about it in a somewhat abstract way, you can realize that the white keys and the black keys are on different horizontal planes. So this, the white keys, is lower than this, the black keys, okay? So it stands to reason that we're going to have different finger positions depending on if I'm playing white keys or if I'm playing on black keys. And notice what I did there. I actually moved my hand in closer to the fallboard. That's the second thing we can notice, is that the black keys are farther in towards the fallboard, okay? So both these two reasons naturally just sort of imply that the fingers are going to have a different position, and by extension, the hand. So I might use the term finger position, or I might say hand position, and I'm using those interchangeably because the fingers are attached to the hand, obviously. To further explain this, okay, let's say I'm going to play middle C with my second finger. I could be in this position. I could also be in this position, okay? I could also be in this position, a little bit of a weird example here, or I could be in this position. Those are all different sort of hand or finger positions. And you can see that one of those is probably more efficient or easier than another. And that's really what we're interested in. Efficiency, ease, avoiding awkwardness, avoiding tension. Okay, so let's go to the second point, which is basically I'm going to define the three basic different kinds of hand positions. And those are all white keys. So if I'm playing all in the white keys, it stands to reason that I should be out here in the white key area. I shouldn't be in the black key area. If I'm playing black keys, excuse me, I shouldn't be out here because the black keys are in here. Okay, so it stands to reason that my hand would be farther in here, my fingers would be more like this. Now, if I'm playing a mix of the two, I'm going to sort of split the difference, okay? And I'll go into detail as to the logic behind these choices. So notice that each of those they look different. White keys, black keys, in the middle. Now let's go ahead and talk about why it matters, and then we'll talk about why we make the choices we do as to hand position and how that changes depending on what we're playing. And the first reason why it matters is actually what we already discussed, and that's the fact that the white keys and the black keys are different in the fact that the black keys are taller, they're higher, they're farther in on the keyboard, okay? That's the first difference. The second difference has to do with a natural or sort of optimal hand shape or hand position. Now, if you're not familiar with this idea, I talk about it in another video, a couple different videos, but I'll put a card up above. And basically the concept of natural or optimal hand position, if you will, is this idea that our fingers work best when they're in this sort of shape. It requires less muscular effort, basically, to hold the fingers in this position, and they move really freely and easily. And we can actually use our bones, our skeletal system, to help us move around and play the keys. If we take that into account, then of course it makes sense playing all white keys being out here, because we can retain that natural hand position, that shape. And it stands to reason that if I'm going to play some white keys and some black keys, I don't want to stay in this position and then reach, because now I don't have that position with my fingers, okay? So that changes. Also, if I'm going to play all on black keys, see how this also does not retain that shape. It looks very awkward. My thumb is barely touching here. These fingers are almost flat. So if we look at these individually, it makes sense. If I'm playing all white keys, I'm going to be here. My thumb is going to be more on the edge of the white keys. My longer fingers are going to be closer to the black keys. I'm not going to try to scrunch them up. I'm just going to let them stay in that natural position. If I'm playing all on black keys, then I want to retain that same position. Okay, so I'm going to have something kind of like this. So notice my thumb can still be on the edge, but then these fingers stay in their sort of optimal position. So again, they're not scrunched up, but they're not flat, okay? And that's a really important concept because when I try to reach with these fingers, that requires constant muscular activity, which is going to accumulate over time, cause tension, and we don't want that, okay? This is very easy to maintain over a long period of time, let's say practicing. And I already showed a couple examples of what a bad position, like this is a bad hand position or finger position rather, okay? And you know, this is a bad finger position or something. But really what we're getting at here is in and out on the keyboard, not so much this is like the wrist or the hand and arm are doing weird things. But I'm using those examples to illustrate the point so you can kind of see, okay, I'm starting to understand the concept of bad hand position. Because I think a lot of times when people come to the piano, they don't really think about it in terms of that. It's just like, okay, I have to play this note, so I'm going to play that note. And we don't even think about how we do it. But it's really important that we think about how we actually do that. And then of course, the last example I'm going to do here is if I'm playing on white keys and black keys. So notice that if I'm going to say play a B minor scale, and I chose this one specifically because it necessitates both playing black keys and white keys so that I either have to play my third finger, so I'm going to play B, C sharp, and then D, and notice D is in the black key area, or I have to do something like this. So I have to scrunch this finger up and I have to reach with this finger. This is a very bad finger position on the keyboard. The muscular effort that requires me to pull the finger in, that's going to cause tension, and my finger just doesn't want to move very easily like that. And reaching with my finger, I have no power, I have no control, and so that's not going to work well. So I want to maintain that natural hand shape, that natural finger shape, and have this sort of white key and black key, or a mix of the two hand position, if you will, where I can play in the black key area. Now, oftentimes we're told, don't play in the black key area, and this is somewhat good advice, but it's also bad advice at the same time, and let me explain. So the keys are like seesaws. They're essentially a fulcrum, right? And if you've played on a seesaw when you were younger, I think most of us probably have, you know that when you're on the outer edge, you have the most leverage. It's easiest to make it go down. And so generally, we don't want to play in here on the white keys or the black keys because it's just harder. It takes a lot more effort to put the key down, and it's just harder to control. However, it's more important that we're in a good position so that we have most control over the notes, because if we're in an awkward position, even if we technically have more control because of the fulcrum action, because of the awkward position, we'll actually have less control. And I hope that makes sense because it's a really, really important point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate this with just a scale and an arpeggio, and we're going to go back to that B minor scale, okay? So this is what this would look like if I'm going to play on white keys and black keys. So a mix, right? That's our third basic sort of hand position, or finger position rather. So notice how my fingers are retaining that sort of natural shape, if you will. And notice how this finger is not actually on the outer edge of the key. It's a little bit more in, and this finger is a little bit inside that area too. A lot of times people feel like, oh man, I get stuck in there. But you actually don't have to. If you make sure that you release your finger. So after I play it, I just release it and it just kind of comes back up. And I don't have to feel like I get stuck, okay? And like I said, that point is that if you're in an optimal position, if you're in the perfect position to play a note on the keyboard, that will actually overcome any difficulty you might feel from being in a less optimal position on the fulcrum, if that makes sense. Now I'm just going to play an arpeggio, and I'm going to play a B major arpeggio, okay? So notice that I'm only going to play white keys with short fingers, thumb, and fifth finger, and my longer fingers are going to play the black keys. So I could be a little bit farther out if I want, and I can still retain that hand shape, or I like being a little bit closer in, so my thumb is closer to that black key, sort of like this. But I could be a little bit farther out if I wanted to, but it just feels, I just like it better when I'm a little bit closer. Now one thing that you'll notice there is you'll notice that my fingers are slightly less curved, and that's really just because the larger the interval, the less curved your fingers will be, okay? And that's a topic for another video, but I just thought it's important to comment. Now I can play that same key, but as a scale. You'll notice again that my thumb is really close here, and these fingers on the black key have their optimal shape, and I can play across like this. Okay, it does not look like this. So say my thumb is way out here. I have very little control. It's actually much harder to move my fingers smoothly and quickly in that position. So I hope this all made sense. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.